was one of those golden summer evenings that made Cedar Falls, Ohio, feel like the safest place in America. The sun dipped low behind rows of trimmed maple trees, casting long shadows across the white fences and manicured lawns. Roger Kemp drove home with the windows down, the radio humming an old Springsteen tune. He was tired. Another double shift at the manufacturing plant. But comforted by the thought of a quiet dinner with his daughter Ollie. She'd texted earlier that she was headed to the community pool after school. "Won't be late, Dad," she'd said, followed by a smiley face. But now, hours later, the house was dark and too quiet. Roger walked inside, calling her name, expecting to hear the familiar shuffle of her flip-flops down the hallway or the sound of music from her room. Nothing. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, a half-empty glass of lemonade beside it, still cold, beads of condensation forming on the rim. That was strange. Allie never left her phone behind, not even for a minute. Roger's chest tightened as he noticed the time, 9:42 p.m. The pool usually closed at 8. Maybe she got a ride home with a friend, he thought, trying to steady his breathing. But there was that quiet voice in the back of his mind, whispering that something wasn't right. He stepped out onto the porch, scanning the backyard. The air was still except for the faint hum of crickets and the soft ripple of the pool. Then he noticed it, a pale yellow light spilling from the crack beneath the pool shed door. Roger frowned. He always made sure everything was locked up before leaving for work. "That's odd," he muttered. The shed light had no reason to be on, and Ollie never went in there alone. He hesitated for a moment, every fatherly instinct telling him to go check, yet hoping, somehow, that what he'd find was nothing at all. Roger's footsteps crunched softly over the gravel path as he crossed the yard, flashlight in hand. The night felt unnaturally still, like the air itself was holding its breath. The pool water shimmered faintly under the porch light, reflecting streaks of moonlight across the fence. As he got closer, that faint yellow glow from the shed seemed to grow stronger. Not bright but steady, like someone was still inside. The door was ajar, rocking slightly in the warm breeze. Roger's pulse thudded in his ears as he reached out and touched the handle. It was cold, too cold for a summer night. "Allie," he called softly, his voice cracking the silence. No answer. Just the sound of the wind brushing against the trees and the quiet, mechanical hum of the pool filter. He nudged the door open, and the scent hit him immediately. Chlorine mixed with something else, sharp and metallic. The kind of smell you never forget once it hits your nose. The beam of his flashlight cut through the dark, slicing across stacks of folded lawn chairs, bags of pool salt, and old swim gear. Then the light landed on something small and familiar, a pair of white sneakers. Roger froze. Allie's sneakers. They were lying awkwardly near the corner, one tipped over, the laces tangled. His throat tightened as dread flooded through him. He whispered her name again, softer this time, almost afraid of the answer. "Allie." The flashlight trembled slightly in his grip as he stepped forward. The floor was wet, streaked with faint footprints leading from the door to the back of the shed. He followed them slowly, each step heavier than the last. That rhythmic dripping sound he'd heard earlier grew louder, water tapping on concrete in uneven beats. Then, the beam of light shifted and he saw her. His daughter, lying still by the wall, her hair damp and glistening, her hand reaching out as if frozen mid-motion. Roger's knees nearly gave out, the world around him dimmed, and all he could hear was the pounding of his heart and the sound of someone, moving behind the boxes stacked in the shadows. For a long, breathless second, Roger couldn't move. His flashlight beam quivered across the floor, shaking with the tremor in his hands. Then he heard it again. A low, dragging sound, like a boot scraping against concrete. The noise came from behind a stack of storage bins near the back wall. Roger's mind raced. His first thought was impossible hope. Maybe it was Allie trying to move. But as he took a step closer, a shadow shifted, tall and deliberate. The beam of light caught a glint of sweat on a man's face, wild eyes staring back at him through the dark. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was waiting. Watching Roger realize the truth. The man straightened slowly, his breath ragged and shallow, his face half lit by the trembling flashlight. His shirt was damp, his hands slick with something Roger didn't want to recognize. Time seemed to warp. Every sound magnified the buzzing of the light, the creak of the shed walls, Roger's heartbeat hammering like thunder in his chest. He wanted to shout, to demand who this stranger was and what he'd done, but no words came out. The man's gaze flickered to the open door, the only escape, and Roger saw his muscles tense. Instinct took over. He stepped forward, blocking the exit, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. The air between them grew thick, electric, charged with a kind of danger Roger had never felt before. Then the man lunged, everything happened fast, a blur of motion and chaos. The flashlight clattered to the floor, spinning wildly, throwing jagged beams across the walls. Roger's shoulder slammed into a shelf, sending tools crashing down. He could feel the man's weight driving into him, the strength of someone desperate and cornered. Roger's hand groped blindly until his fingers brushed against something metal, a pool skimmer pole. He swung hard, connecting with a dull, sickening sound. The man grunted, staggered back, then came again. They slammed into the door, the hinges groaning under the impact. Roger's mind screamed one thought over and over: don't let him get away. Don't let him leave this shed. The shed had become a battlefield, a small, suffocating space filled with shadows, broken glass, and the echo of two men fighting for completely different reasons. Roger's breath came in harsh, uneven gasps as he swung the metal pole again, barely missing the stranger's head. The flashlight, cracked but still flickering, rolled across the wet floor, sending jagged slices of light around the room. The stranger's eyes glowed briefly each time the beam passed, eyes full of rage, fear, and something worse as satisfaction. Outside, the pool rippled faintly under the moonlight, its reflection creeping through the narrow window like a ghostly shimmer. Roger's foot slipped on the wet concrete, and the man lunged, knocking them both to the ground. The sound of their struggle filled the night, a thud, a grunt, the shattering of glass, until it seemed the entire yard was holding its breath. Roger felt the man's hands close around his throat. Panic surged through him, a primal kind of terror. He clawed at the man's arms, gasping, vision blurring. In the chaos, his hand brushed against something, the broken metal hinge from a fallen shelf. He gripped it tight, swinging it upward with everything he had left. The man howled, stumbling back, clutching his arm. Roger scrambled to his feet, adrenaline drowning out the pain in his body. The flashlight's dim glow landed on the stranger's face, just long enough for Roger to see the fury there. The kind of fury that only comes from being cornered. The man charged again, roaring, and for a brief instant, Roger thought he might not survive this. But something in him, something buried deep within every father, took over. He waited for the perfect second, the moment the man was close enough to strike again. Then, with a guttural yell, Roger swung the pole one final time. The sound of impact was deafening, metal against bone, a crack that echoed in the still night. The stranger dropped instantly, crumpling to the floor in a heap of motionless weight. Roger stood there, chest heaving, sweat and blood dripping down his face, staring at what he'd done. The silence that followed was heavy, almost unreal, broken only by the soft hum of the pool filter outside and the faint, distant wail of sirens growing closer with every passing second. By the time the police arrived, the quiet suburban street of Maple Grove Drive looked like a crime scene out of a nightmare. Flashing red and blue lights bathed the white fences in eerie color, and the once peaceful hum of crickets was replaced by the static of police radios and the low murmur of shocked neighbors gathering at their windows. Roger sat on the back steps, hands trembling, eyes locked on the pool shed where it had all happened. His shirt was torn, his knuckles raw, and his voice hoarse from shouting. He didn't even look up when the officers approached. His gaze was fixed on the faint beam of light still glowing inside that shed. He was still breathing when I hit him. Roger muttered numbly. He was going to kill her. He was already killing her. Detectives swarmed the property, snapping photos, collecting evidence, whispering to each other in clipped, urgent tones. It didn't take long before they uncovered who the stranger was. A 34-year-old drifter named Travis Hale. He'd been working odd jobs around Cedar Falls for weeks, mostly as a handyman for the older residents. No fixed address, no family nearby. Just a worn-out pickup truck, a fake name on his employment forms, and a background that sent chills through every officer who read it. There were records from 3 different states: trespassing, assault, stalking. Nothing that ever landed him long behind bars, but enough to paint a picture of a predator who knew how to disappear when things got close. And somehow he'd chosen this town, this house, to hide behind normality again. As the night dragged toward dawn, the details began to unravel like a nightmare Roger couldn't wake up from. Hale had been watching the Kemps for weeks, parked a few houses down under the pretense of repairing fences and cleaning pools. Neighbors remembered seeing him near the back gate, offering to help with maintenance. Investigators later found his fingerprints on the shed door, and footprints matching his boots leading up from the alley. It all made sense now. The strange feeling Roger had been getting the past few days, the sense that someone was watching when he left for work, the faint flicker of a shadow behind the fence at dusk. He'd brushed it off as paranoia. But now, as Roger sat there with the first light of morning creeping across the yard, he realized the truth, that evil doesn't just come from faraway places or dark alleys. Sometimes it walks quietly into your backyard, wearing the face of someone who just offered to help. Weeks later, the Kemp house stood silent, its windows dark, the pool drained and covered. The neighborhood tried to move on, but the story of that night never really left Cedar Falls. Roger rarely spoke after the incident, not to reporters, not to friends, not even to the detectives who called him a hero. To him there was no victory in what he'd done, only a haunting stillness where his daughter's laughter used to be. But one thing changed forever. Each evening, before the sun set, Roger would turn on the single light above the old pool shed. Neighbors said he did it as a kind of ritual, to make sure the darkness never fully returned. Others whispered that sometimes, late at night, they'd see the light flicker, even when the house was empty. A quiet reminder that the line between safety and horror is thinner than any of us want to believe, because in the end monsters don't always come from the woods or the shadows of forgotten towns. Sometimes, they walk right past us, smiling, until the night we finally see them for who they are. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.